Yeah, I love that. Speaking of my person, for example, so I was in the cafeteria area. How do you like help families navigate also too, like deciding where they're going to go in terms of food? Because let's, talk about it. Like, what's the main topics of, talk when people get old? It's like what they ate and going to the bathroom, let's face it. So, it's the two highlights of the day, Chris, as you know. So, it's like, because I toured a place like with my dad, oh my goodness, like over a year ago. And he has like, stage 4 chronic kidney disease. And then he's got like congestive heart failure and whatever. And he's this little tiny, tiny little bitty old man. But, he has these different conditions. And so he needs to be on like low sodium, low potassium. He has these like different things he needs to do. And I swear to you, I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's look at the menu. Let's see what's for dinner. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, white, yeah, or no, it wasn't even white gravy, brown gravy that has even more sodium, by the way.
Yeah.
It was just like green beans, like freaking, what was it? Oh, it was like carrot cake. It was insane. Oh, and it was like egg rolls or something crazy, like for an appetizer, even at that. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And oh, an ice cream bar like afterwards. And I'm like, holy moly, wait a minute, like cool. Like literally, I think, if I was to own one of these places, like client retention would be key to my financial budgeting, right? Like, I got to keep these
Yes.
people around to have them pay, to pay the bills, right? Cool. Totally opposite, I think, of the strategic plan that this place had going up. But there's so many places like this, Chris. So how do you, well, and it seems like also too, then the ones that have like the salad bar or the whatever, they're just crazy, 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 crazy expensive also too. So how do you navigate some of the food stuff? Or what if you get stuck somewhere that doesn't have food, that because most of them I don't think like cater to somebody's like actual diet, or how do you navigate that? Somebody had asked and I was like, "Ooh, good question," because I just went through this with my dad. So what do you do?
I I first off, I love touring during lunchtime. That way, during the tours with the family, they can smell, they can look and see what does the food actually look like. Now, in assisted living, they're well, with most places, let me move back a second. In most places in assisted living, they will naturally try to do low sodium. They have options for low sugar and things along those lines. But part of assisted living, you're your own person. So if you want to have if you want to have the fried steak with the gravy and actually add more gravy, and I also want two bowls of the Rocky Road, and then right after that we have happy hour, so I'm gonna have four drinks on top of that. That in assisted living, they're their own person, can make that decision. It's about quality of life. There's a lot of communities that will try to have more healthy options. And a lot of times on tours, I tell families, grab a bite to eat. Let's sit down and have lunch. Every place is different with its food. What you're seeing primarily at most places is it's restaurant style. So you sit down, you have someone serve you, they'll take your drink order, they'll take your food order. Typically, it'll be a daily special they'll have a breakfast special, a lunch special, a dinner special. They'll have a fresh made soup of the day where they make it in-house. It's not that canned crap or anything along those lines. So some of the food at these places are really, really good. I had a resident that moved in who did nothing but Meals on Wheels, and then when he moved in, within a couple months, he gained 20, 30 pounds. And he actually looked, he food was very important to him, and that's what he really wanted. So, Yeah, that's something. The food is can be hard to navigate, but those are questions where if you are low sodium, those are questions during the tour you need to ask. What do they do? How much salt do they use? What other options are there? Because besides that, there's also an anytime menu a lot of times where, okay, I don't want the chicken fried steak because that's the lunch special. But they have a strawberry field salad that they do on the anytime during the summer, and that's amazing. And I don't want the dressing, or I want the dressing on the side. But as an adult, you make those decisions. Now, skilled nursing, it's a little bit different. But typically assisted living is you can have some really good food, and there's places as you mentioned that has the salad bar. There's even places that have kind of a snack area where if you're hungry, you can come down in the middle of the night and they'll have sandwiches and fruit and those type of things as well. So yeah. If I lived in an assisted living, I'd probably gain 10 to 20 pounds in the first couple months.
I know, right? Like I was looking at this menu and I was like, oh, whoa, yeah, whew, yeah,
Yeah, the food at some of these places are really, really good.
yeah. I was
There's even a local place that they have their own restaurant, and I think they allow DoorDash, like people can order and come in and pick up from DoorDash because it's that good.
oh my goodness, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Kudos to that place, man. Holy cow. With that being said, somebody asked like about doing tours, right? So like when somebody like sets up a tour or whatever, are there places that like do most of the places let you do in-person tours, or are there some places that like only make you do virtual
If
tours nowadays, or do they make you virtual first and then go in person? Like how are
if
places
they
navigating the tour
if they
circuit?
don't let you do an in-person tour, just run. Yeah,
Okay.
don't allow it. So with tours, I always suggest in-person tours. Now I have worked with situations where family is out of town, where one family member may be out of town. So we'll do a tour together, and I'll go around and FaceTime with my phone, so that way they can kind of see how residents and staff are interacting. What's the overall ambiance? Are the residents smiling, or do they look depressed? Um, so most places allow for tours Monday through Friday during the day. Some places will allow you to tour on the weekend. Um, Even some places will allow you to tour in the evening. It can just be difficult because we have to be respectful because people are living here. So if we're going to be touring at night, is it taking away from um, the family being able to do certain things? I personally don't like touring evenings for memory care. Memory care, it's so important to have that strong structure and that stability. And at night, if you have a good place with a good activities program in memory care, usually you won't see the sundowning as frequently, but still, that's something that touring at night, you may see some of that. Um, so I always try to make sure that we're being respectful of the residents as well, but also making sure that we're getting a really good view of what the community's like. Um, and some communities ask people to don't schedule a tour and just stop in, which I have mixed feelings on because I love being able to come in and seeing what it truly is like, where someone's not like preparing and making sure some fun activities going on. But if you're just dropping in, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone's available to show you around. But yeah, um, if a place will not let you visit in person, there is a huge, huge red flag. So, but this is why you use a senior advisor like myself, because we make sure that you don't go to those type of places.
I love it. Yeah, that's why you have Chris. One
Exactly.
more of the 975 reasons why you need a Chris. Yeah, I love it. question that somebody asked is you keep using sometimes like the term skilled rehab, or skilled, or there's like skilled rehab, I think, or the skilled or something like that. What is that? People are asking compared to like assisted or independent or memory care. Like, what is this whole skilled thing?
So you have skilled rehab and long-term care. So that's typically what you think of as nursing home. Skilled rehab is typically for short-term stay, and that's usually after a hospitalization. Um, this is where it can get a little tricky because in order for insurance to pay for it, typically you have to be in the hospital for 3 consecutive days with a qualifying event. And it can't be 3 days of observation. And then there's certain criteria for insurance paying. So this is where it can get very confusing, but typically you're allowed up to 21 days of being paid for where you can be in a skill or a short-term rehab, and they focus on PT, OT, speech. And usually it's pretty intensive because it's every day, it can be multiple times a day, and they're working you hard because the whole focus on short-term rehab is for you to improve. Not necessarily get back to baseline, but for you to improve. Um, so it's it's also hard because with short-term rehab, and this is why you don't want to be in a crisis situation. So if you know you're going to rehab and it's not going to be safe to go home, reach out to a senior advisor to help find a assisted living community because short-term rehab is short-term. So with insurance, they'll a lot of times they'll pay until you plateau. And when you plateau, that means you're no longer improving. So at that point, okay, you've plateaued and they typically give you 2 to 3 days before they say you have to move or you have to go back home. So that can be very stressful because if you're only given a couple days, well, that if you're going back home, is the home safe to go back to? 2 or 3 days going finding picking an assisted living can be very difficult. Not saying that it can't be done, but typically best case scenario, you say, okay, we can't go back home, we need to go into assisted living, then coordinating for tours. Doesn't mean that they have availability for touring right that day. Maybe we have to do 1 or 2 days out based off of your schedule and the community schedule. Okay, we toured these 2 places. Now we're going to have to talk it over with family. We need a day to decide. We decide we've chosen this place. This is the place to go. Well, now there's certain regulations that they have to do. So now we need to get the doctor's paperwork, which can take one day, it can take a week. It all depends. Do they have their TB test? So in the best case scenario, I mean, I've helped people move in 1 or 2 days, but that's really putting putting the pressure on. But typically it's more about 1 to 2 weeks, and then there's times where it'll be over a year before they move. But short-term rehab is the short stay to get stronger for PT, OT of speech, and then also a lot of places will have long-term care where or that nursing home where people are there 24/7 for a very prolonged period of time because they have those increased medical needs. So.
Yeah. And then question to follow up with that is, and speaking to your background specifically with hospice, how does that work then? Like when someone, enters one of these places and then they need to bring in like palliative and or hospice, like how does all that transition or if someone is like, let's say they're at home, but the family's like like I can't do this whole hospice thing. You know,
Yep.
they're just mentally, physically, they're just not there. And again, like you talked about earlier, the constraints like on the caregiver person, right? Because it's just like, I mean, it's a lot anyways, even just when somebody has like the dementia, especially the dementia
Oh yeah.
and Alzheimer's and things like that. I mean, the caregiver burnout and then they start getting the anger, the resentment, and people start neglecting their own health, their own
Yeah.
family, doing their own laundry and all the things that then go downhill. But yeah, but I mean, especially then when somebody has to transfer over, yeah, like palliative to hospice, like what if somebody's like, yeah, okay, like, okay, I need to tap out. Like, I absolutely can't do this.
Yep.
Like, how do you navigate that?
Very good question. So first, let's differentiate between palliative and hospice. Palliative is typically where a nurse practitioner or a doctor comes out to see you um, once a month, once every couple months, and it's just a little bit more touch points. It's going to see the doctor. It's just you need a little bit more oversight to ensure that you're not going into the hospital. So that's great for people that are dealing with Parkinson's, COPD. There's a lot of situations where that's very beneficial. Hospice is where if you're if you look at an individual and say, I would not be surprised if the doctor says, I would not be surprised if the patient were to die within the 6 months, typically that means that person may be eligible for hospice. Hospice is non-curative. This is more about ensuring that you're not able to do PT, OT. It's about keeping you out of the hospital. If you have cancer, you stop all curative treatment. That doesn't mean that they take you off of all your medications. They may take certain medications off, but it's more about quality of life. And if you're in a community, go for 3 bowls of ice cream. Whatever makes you happy as a diabetic. Yeah. So with hospice, and there's some misconceptions about what hospice is. Hospice is amazing with the right hospice company. But people also think hospice is 24/7, and that's not necessarily the case. There are hospice houses where if your symptoms are unmanaged, then you can go into a hospice house. But what hospice is, it's a nurse typically coming out at least once a week. You have a bath aide that's usually coming out 2 or 3 times a week. You have a chaplain, a social worker. They may have pet therapy. They may have music therapy, and those services are normally coming out once every 2 weeks, typically. So with hospice, it can go into the home, it can go into assisted living, it can go into skilled nursing, it can pretty much go anywhere. So with hospice, it is a lot of times people will live longer just because there's proper oversight, proper medication management. Um, but it's an absolute great resource. But hospice can go anywhere where you are. Just don't think because we go on hospice, someone will be there 24/7. I have a client right now that will be moving here shortly where mom mom has some dementia and dad is spread extremely thin. Um, and they added hospice on, and overall it's helped immensely, but also now it's posing some difficulties. First off, not all communities will allow you to move in on hospice. So that's part of it. Sometimes you'll have to live discharge off a hospice in order to move into a community. But what we're seeing is the husband is he's stressed because of everything. So they're medicating her and they're giving her a lot of Ativan, Xanax, and she is becoming much more lethargic. And for the husband, he's getting to be able to relax a little bit, but because of this, she's also getting weaker. So this is a very, very difficult case where we're also getting some other resources involved to make sure that she doesn't decline further. Um, so, but hospice with the right company, the right situation, the communication is absolutely amazing. I can't say enough positive things about hospice. Um, what was your initial question, Jen? I know it was about hospice.
No, that was it about, like
Okay.
for people, that need to do like the palliative or, moving on to hospice, like what different settings can they do it? Can they engage in that? Yeah, like and you address that, yeah, when they're
Okay.
in these communities versus, like because I know like people know they can do it from home, but like then what happens? When they need to transfer it over, or if they're at home and they're like, yeah, I can't, and then they go into a community, can they transfer the hospice like right into the community? So, yep,
Yep.
no, beautiful answer as always, which is great.
Okay.
Um, Question back to somebody asked about the skill rehab again. So can someone like transfer basically like so they're in the hospital, maybe they go to like intensive inpatient rehab program somewhere for like a
Yep.
week, 2 weeks or something like that. Would they maybe then do like a step down, a transition, maybe then into like the skilled rehab after that before they go home? Or would they go into the skilled then like before they go into back into the assisted? Is that sometimes kind of like a stepgap from that continuum of care?
So
Like if they're
if
not quite ready to go home yet?
so a lot of it is insurance dictated. So
Okay.
this is where it's very difficult because insurance is okay, they've hit that plateau, get them out. It's all about um, getting them out. And typically, because I can't remember the exact specifics, um, but it's when it comes to rehab, I think it's day 1 through 20, it's covered at 100%. And that's why they try to cut it off at day 21. Between day 21 and 100 days, um, the individual is responsible for the co-insurance. So if you have standard Medicare, they're responsible for 20% of that. So typically, I think it's around $300 a day. So they'd be responsible for 20% of $300 a day for day 21 through 100. After day 100, Medicare stops paying 100% and it's pretty much considered long-term care. Um, so there are um, if someone, let's say you're in assisted living and you have a fall and you break your hip and you have to go into the hospital, you go into skilled rehab. Um, the goal is to get them back into assisted living. The benefit of being in an assisted living already is, or moving from short-term rehab into assisted living, they have their typically PT, OT, and speech on site Monday through Friday. So you can go through Part B Medicare and bill for PT, OT, speech whenever you come back to assisted living. So I always, it's very almost 100% of the case whenever you go from short-term rehab back to assisted living, uh, it's almost a definite that they're going to do Part B rehab because we want to make sure that they don't lose whatever they've gained. And one of some of my favorite residents. I love it when I'd see them in one of the main areas and they're doing their exercises because the more effort they put in, the more independent. And I've seen people come out much stronger because they put in that effort. Um, so that I wouldn't. There's really not. And from what I know, there's really not a lot of places where they can go from short-term rehab to like a step down unit. You can private pay for some of these places. So if you're in rehab and they'll no longer pay, well, you can stay there and private pay. But it does get very expensive. You're probably looking at over $9,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow. Yeah. Well, and I guess and that's a question that somebody asked earlier is yes, these places are so expensive anyways. How do you help people navigate that? Or do you kind of help people understand kind of like what the budget is and kind of what type of places they need to be looking for? Or is there, like somebody else that you have like financially like that they should work with first and kind of get that figured out before they get to you? Um, yeah, because again, from like a planning perspective, it's like, okay, you got to think like, oh, where are they now? And then how much money do we have? And then kind of whatever is that going to look like? So yeah, can you talk through that a little bit or kind of like how
Oh
that
yeah.
financial thing is? Well, because when the other thing is too, I just thought about this as well. Like, and again, just thinking about like looking at places like for my dad that we had to also, how do people like prove income, or prove that they have this kind of money too? Because they have to like apply, right, or something, and then they have to get qualified to even get accepted into these places. But how do you, yeah, because, again, Chris Services, 701 that you do, yeah, how do you help people just like navigate that aspect? Because I know like besides, the needs of the client and stuff like that, the financial barriers are usually like financial and geographic, are usually like pretty huge barriers. And then I guess 2.0 of that is there's like HUD locations, like or places that are low income or whatever
Mhm.
that is. Can you kind of speak to some of that too?
So there's a ton to unpack from that. First off, financially, it's not cheap. It's expensive. When I tell people, and first let's first look at let's first look at the common. Some people think that the monthly assisted living cost versus mortgage or rent, so they'll compare that, and that's not necessarily a good comparison. Because there's so many things that are included with the community living. You've got your utilities, food, all the maintenance, all the property taxes, transportation is usually included, the housekeeping, the social activities. So it's never apples to oranges of, okay, well, this is 6,000 a month. Well, my mortgage payment is $1,000 a month. So you have to take all that into consideration. But financing is a very big factor. So whenever talking to families, there's a lot of different resources I try to give them. First off, almost everyone that I work with, I normally suggest elder law or estate planner. Those can be absolutely crucial. First off, if you have any type of dementia, you want to make sure you have power of attorney, will, trust, all that taken care of far in advance. So, because once you become memory care eligible, then you're not able to make those changes. It's also very important to plan for the future. So when it comes to assisted living, nowhere in all of the US does Medicare pay for assisted living. Medicaid can come in, but typically in the state of Missouri, well, across the US, Medicaid will never pay for room and board. Um, there are situations, depending on the state, where it will come in and you'll pay for room and board, but they'll pay for assistance with ADLs and so on and so forth. That's a whole other discussion. So there's also times where we suggest financial advisors. Usually a lot of people already have a financial advisor that they work with. Um, but we talk about proper planning for moving into a community. The other aspect is Medicaid going to be necessary? So let's say I've dealt with situations where they have their Medicaid eligible immediately, where they have less than $6,000 of liquid assets. And then I've also had people that have had multi-millions, and it costs what it costs. So, and this is where it can also be difficult because the financial aspect is an important factor. because at this place is my absolute favorite, but it's $2,000 more a month, and long term, that's really going to affect how long we can stay there. Um, when it comes to Medicaid planning, because this is where I know enough information to be dangerous. Um, but with Medicaid, knowing that assisted living is not covered by Medicaid. So let's say we know we have mom is 90 years old, she's not in good health, but we want to get her into a community. We have approximately 6 years left of being able to pay for assisted living at this level, or we have 10 years um, at this level for based off of the price. So that's also a big deciding factor for families. And this is where once again, we give you all the best options and the families make the choice. There's also situations where you know that you are going to be running out of money, so let's talk to an elder law. Let's get a irrevocable trust in order, or a revocable trust to protect assets. So this is where really, with all my resources, I really try to ensure that they're good, know their stuff in and out, but also are very ethical. Because I want to make sure that the clients are taken care of. Because especially with the money, the resources involved, it can be there's just a lot to do with it. Um, Regarding the HUD housing, I don't do a I told you guys earlier that I am a free service. So I get paid by the communities, but I get paid when it's a private pay. So if they're paying um, $5,000 a month for living in a community, I get a finder's fee for that. If it's Medicaid, if it's HUD housing, there's no financial incentive to me, but I'm all about trying to guide and give those resources. So when it comes to the HUD housing, there's a lot of different ones. Not all of them are equal, but I'm not in the HUD housing very often. There's some case management partners that I've worked with HUD housing that are great resources. Also, A plus Aging Advantage might be one of them. But yeah, the financial aspect can be very difficult because it's not cheap. There's certain things you can do. There's long-term care insurance. There's life insurance that there's been some changes with life insurance where you can incorporate that. Are they a veteran? Because with veterans, it can be anywhere from $1,500 a month to $3,500 a month, where they would get that towards assisted living. There's also certain non-for-profits that can help with monthly costs. Sometimes families contribute. Yeah, I don't want to say that it's not expensive because it is. Um, Probably the hardest thing for me is I have with my mom, I feel like she would do really good in a community. But she is very resistant because she wants to leave a legacy. She wants to leave some money behind for me and my brother. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but she wants to leave a little behind. And this is where it's very hard because I would rather have my mom happy, social, and me having peace of mind that she's in a good place rather than a legacy behind. But that's me. So this is something where the family members, there's certain things you can do to protect those assets. Like I said, if you get with estate and elder law. But this is where uh, it bothers me when someone that's taken care of the kids have worked so hard and have done an amazing job parenting, and then they don't have the best quality of life because they're thinking of others. But that's my viewpoint. So yeah.
Well, and I think some of that too, my goodness, is just like their generation
Oh,
also.
100%.
Because I was just in a meeting yesterday and there was like a ton of social workers and, care managers, case managers, and we were talking about that exact thing. It's just like for some of them, that's just literally like
Oh yeah.
that chivalry aspect is just like how they were raised. I mean, that was just like their mentality. And like God love my great aunt, like for example, is wild. Like she my mom said like she literally when she would go to the bathroom, just regular go to the bathroom, she would literally use 3 squares of toilet paper every single time. These people, yeah, stay seated for this one, they're multi-millionaires.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they to this day they have a freaking bench with their. I mean, they like her, like like my great aunt and uncle. Like they passed a long time ago, but like they have their own bench at the flipping zoo,
Oh yeah.
and several other places and stuff like that around town. Like he was a Shriner. I mean, they like donated money all over the place, but yet I'm like, what? My mom's like, what are we doing? They just
I
have a different mindset,
Yep.
It's like, what do you
Well,
do,
and I also see sometimes we have to have realistic expectations, those talks with people, because I've worked with clients where they don't have the money, but they have a very high level of care. They need assisted living, but they want a two-bedroom, and but they can only afford $2,000 a month. This is sometimes where we have to have realistic those conversations. I mean, also with most of these seniors, they also will never use that second bedroom either. So sorry, I'm going down a different rabbit hole. So yeah, but I see that all the time with that age demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, to